What's up YouTube, this is Tubedigga. This video is a complete beginner's guide to Keygroup programs in the MPC Live and MPC X. This will also partially relate to legacy MPCs, as a lot of the options are pretty much similar and the fundamental usage of Keygroup programs is essentially the same. This video will be a lot quicker because many of the subpages within the Keygroup program editor are exactly the same as the drum programs. So Keygroup programs are the second program type that we can select in the track field here. So if we click on that, it creates a Keygroup program, which is program 002. As with drum programs, in the actual program menu options here from the main page, we can delete the program, duplicate it. I do apologize, I didn't cover this in the drum programs video, but basically it does exactly the same. It duplicates the program, but it will duplicate it and put it on the next available unused track. We can bounce the sample, bounce the audio track, save the program, or save the current sample, which will be the last pad that you pressed. Let's cancel that. I'm going to press menu and go to program editor. First of all, I'm going to explain the two main uses of a Keygroup program. We can either have one key group within the Keygroup program, so we have to think of the Keygroup program as a Keygroup program that holds as many key groups as we create. We can create a total of 128 key groups. Okay, this field here shows us what key group we're currently working in, and it's no different to this one here. So at the moment we've only got one key group. We can create additional key groups just by turning the data wheel with this field highlighted. So now we've got 4 key groups. We're working in key group 1 and we can switch to whichever one we want to work in. So as an example, if I change the volume of key group 1, we can select from here or here to work within key group 2, and as you can see the volume has jumped back up to 0. That will tell you, just from that basic explanation, that all the options that you get in this page and all the other additional pages can be applied individually to each different key group. So we can either use it in this way with one key group. We load one sample in to here in the same way as the drum programs, and that sample can be played chromatically up the scale on the pads or on a MIDI keyboard. If we want to create a fully fledged multi-sample instrument, that is to say one where we've imported a whole scale of notes that have been recorded professionally in the studio of a piano or a guitar or any other acoustic instrument, we would then create enough sub-key groups, so to speak, within this key group program, or just key groups, to accommodate each and every single recorded note. So we could create a fully fledged multi-sample program. So this will illustrate that best. If we press the piano icon up here, this basically relates to the note range. So we can select the note range for the first key group here or the additional key groups. Okay, so I've reduced the amount of key groups to 1. Let's put it back up to 4. So we're working in key group 1. The note range is the entire range, C2 all the way up to G8. If we press the piano icon here, we can see that that sample, let's hypothetically say we'd loaded a sample in, that sample will now be able to be played all the way up the range of notes here. If we were creating a multi-sample instrument that would sound a lot more realistic than just having the same sample being triggered, but if you had a multi-sample instrument, this is how you would create something that sounded a lot more realistic. So you'd work in key group 1, you would double tap here, your low key is the very lowest key, double tap on the highest key, and you would set that to exactly the same key. And now we can see all the other notes are pink, and that means they're available for us to use, but we're only using that very lowest note or that very lowest key for this note, okay, for this key group. If we then wanted to add the next sample that was one note up from that, we would choose the lowest key to be the sharp and the highest key to be the same. Okay, so C sharp. Let's go back down to key group 1. Okay, so we're just individually separating those keys. If we go up to key group 3, now they're all red because we haven't set a specific range. So let's now set that to the D and the highest key to the D. And let's just do it one more time. Let's set the low key to the E and the highest key to the E. So now we've got 4 key groups, and there you go. So the ones that aren't highlighted are pink, okay, but when we're actually focused on them, they turn red, and the unoccupied ones are white. And then we would continue to fill those up with all the different pitched samples if we had a fully fledged bank of multi-sampled instruments that had been recorded in a professional studio. And that's how you would create a fully fledged multi-instrument key group program within the MPC Live or MPC-X. As said before, that will show you that every single key group, because I did that volume change a little while back in the video to key group 1, let's do it again. If we choose our second key group now, the volume jumps back up. And again, that will tell you that you can change all these different parameters for each individual key group. And that will give you some idea of how complex you can get within a key group program. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to one key group and then take you through all the options. So pretty similar to a drum program, you can set the overall polyphony for the entire key group program, the semitones, the fine tuning and the transposition. As I've showed you, this is where you select your key groups. It's no different from here. Key track will allow you to play that one sample in this key group or whatever key group you're using up the scale. If you turn that off, then the sample will just play back at the same pitch no matter what pad you press or key that you press on a MIDI keyboard if you've got one connected. Then you've got volume for each individual key group, or in our case we've only just got this one key group now. That's the overall volume for that key group. And we've got panning. The note range here is exactly the same as setting it in there. You can just set it from here without having to go into there. You've got semitones or semitunes again for this individual key group, which is separate from the master or the entire program's semitones. So the semi and the fine are no different from this. It's just that this is for the individual key group and this is for the entire program. You've got the key group polyphony. So you can have the polyphony set for the master, you know, either polyphonic, fully polyphonic, monophonic, or an actual specific polyphony or voice count value. You can do the same for the individual key groups. You can also set mute groups up in the same way that you can in a drum program. Here's your layering, which is found in the LFO modulation page for drum programs, but it's actually found here. The reason why this is now down here is because they've had to move it around slightly in the LFO modulation page to accommodate this additional controller mod. We'll get to that in a minute. We don't have access to this in a drum program, but I'll get to that in a minute. So yeah, you can set up mute groups again for all your individual key groups. So we could have our key group number 1 set to mute group 1, key group number 2, we could set that to the same mute group or a different one. We've got 32 available ones, same as drum programs. Okay, so that's mute groups. I've covered these in the drum program video. You've got your layers here, so you can cycle the different layers. The default is velocity. Okay, so it will just respond to the velocity, providing you've got your full level switched on or off. You can cycle through the layers or you can cycle through them randomly. You can set your sample play to one shot or note on, and that of course affects whether you can loop the sample or not. So if we've got it in one shot, let's go to the samples page, pad loop is grayed out. In the same way as drum programs, switch it to on, and now you get access to your looping function. Another thing to say on that, one shot will give you a different envelope type. So we're in one shot mode. Let's go to the envelope page. We've got an attack, hold, decay, sustain envelope or an attack, decay, simple envelope. We can switch between them two for both the filter and the amp. If we switch the sample plater note on and then go back to the filter page, now we've got an ADSR envelope for both the filter and the amp. And that's the same in drum programs as well. Right, so that's the first page covered. Sample page is exactly the same as drum programs, although you can see we cannot warp the sample now. If we had a sample loaded in fact, let's just load in one sample. Let's just load in anything, that'll do, acoustic cymbal. So if we'd sliced this sample up for some reason, we can also choose individual slices and assign them to the different key groups. There's so many different variables again as to why you would use either slices or just the pad. Okay, I've shown you this in drum programs. If you change the start and end points, this will be reflected on that same sample if you've got that mapped to another pad. If you set it to pad, you can individually set the start points. So this would be handy if you had a multi-sampled instrument that you wanted to just make some very tiny adjustments to the start and end points to give it a slightly different feel when you play back different keys or different pads. Okay, it's a lot more flexible having it set to pad. That's what I would recommend you set all your samples to. All is good if you want to make those same changes and reflect them over the same sample on different keys. I'm not going to go into that too much. It's the same as drum programs. You've got semi-tunes, semitones, fine tuning. You can reverse the sample, okay, or it won't reverse it, it will just play it in reverse. And you've got your pad loop again. Up here, we've got the same options again as drum programs. You can link the slices, you can set your loop lock to on or off, you can set your zero snap to on or off. Let's go to pan velocity. Again, exactly the same as drum programs, although now we've got access to the root note settings. We can change it from the base sample settings, okay, which would be in our sample edit page. We've got the root note there, C3. Okay, we can change it in here to any other note there, okay. So it's not going to change at the moment, and that's because I have got key track set to off. Okay, so let's switch that back on. Let's go back. Now it will play very low because it's being triggered from our very first pad in pad bank A. But we can actually increase the pitch or decrease it in here. So again, it's just another option for fine tuning. You know, we've got all the semi-tuning settings in the main page here. We've got the overall key group tuning. We can tune it from there. You know, it's just, you know, a ton of options for actually fine tuning. Same as drum programs, you've got panning, you've got velocity start and velocity end. Filter envelope, exactly the same as drum programs. LFO modulation page, pretty much the same as drum programs, but now we get the additional options to control the Keygroup program with an external MIDI controller for the pitch bend. Okay, so if we increase that with our data wheel, that introduces the amount of pitch bend that's being sent from an external keyboard that we may have connected. We can choose to set the amount of modulation wheel, and the destination is hardwired there to LFO. Okay, and then you've got your destinations which these correspond to, and we've got aftertouch to filter. Effects, again, exactly the same as drum programs. You've got 4 slots, you can load in all your different insert effects, and then you've got your sends, which will send an amount of any insert effects you've got routed to your returns. I've shown you the basic fundamental ways that you can use a Keygroup program. Just to reiterate, you can have one sample mapped all the way up the scale, which can be interesting, but is also the classic cheesy voice sound is a good example where you can play a melody up and down the keys, or you can go super realistic and create your own fully fledged multi-sample Keygroup instrument in the MPC Live or MPC X. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please do check out drum programs if you've not already. That will give you a much better grounding to then understand Keygroup programs. The next program type I'm going to cover is clip programs. So please stay tuned for that, and I will see you on the next one. Please like, subscribe and share. Please support me on Patreon. I would be most appreciative. This is Tubedigga and I'm out.